Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the Michael Dukes Show, our one of the big radio broadcast. Good morning and welcome to it. It's Wednesday, which means that joining us here in hour two should be State Senator Mike Shower, who comes on for the Shower Hour of Power, where he shares with us his thoughts on all the different stuff that's going on around the state and with the legislature. This morning, it should be interesting. There's a couple bills that got passed yesterday, including one on hunting and residential licenses, which Mike had some things to say about, and I thought that was an interesting thing to pick up on. So we'll be talking about that here later on this morning, and we'll see what else he has in the hip pocket for legislative information in hour two. In hour one this morning, it is a little bit of headlines, some stories that I found interesting from around the state, and actually a national headline too that I thought was interesting. And I had some personal experience with, so I thought I would bring that to the table and talk about that this morning. I was debating as to whether or not I should throw the phone lines open this morning. Maybe we'll leave that to the chat room to decide whether or not the phone lines. How about that? It's not a democracy, but they're not really peasants. That was not an appropriate phrase. We're going to let them say what they need to say here this morning. They'll tell us whether or not things are starting to heat up down in the legislature. Things are starting to move faster, and there are definitely some interesting things going on down there. And as we get down to this last, 3 weeks to the legislative session, we will, I'm sure we'll see a acceleration of that timeline and things that are going on. So we'll cover a lot of that here this morning. Talk about some of the bills that are going on and happening around the state. One of those bills, which I thought, one of those bills was the bill that Sarah Vance has been working on. Now, Sarah Vance has been a champion of protecting kids, from all kinds of problems, sexual abuse, trafficking, not just kids, but all Alaskans, but specifically kids. And she had a piece of legislation that was HB 264. And you'll remember that there was some debate on the House floor here a while ago where Andrew Gray proposed a handwritten amendment that would make it a felony for somebody older than 18 to have relations with someone who was younger than 18, with some exceptions. Now, the problem with the amendment was that it was literally one sentence and it was handwritten, but it had much larger ramifications because Sarah Vance's bill was it was not a bill that was dealing specifically with criminal law. It was dealing it had to do with age of consent and welfare checks and checks after sexual assault and rape and things like that. But it didn't specifically have anything to do with the criminal aspect of that. And unfortunately, Gray's bill or Gray's amendment to this, we talked a little bit about this. It created some real problems, right? So somebody who was 18 with a boyfriend or girlfriend who was 17, all of a sudden would have been committing a felony. And I mean, it did not carve out an exception for marriage. The legal age in the state of Alaska for marriage is 16. So if somebody was 18 and married a 16-year-old, then technically they would have been breaking the law. I mean, there's a lot of problems with this one sentence bill that he wrote on the fly without vetting it or having legal go through it or anything else. Now, even though that's how it was put forward, the amendment passed 32-6. Even as some lawmakers, again, were criticizing the amendment's language as inadequate. According to the Alaska Beacon, Gray said he would have preferred a longer, formally drafted amendment, but there wasn't available at the time of the vote. But there was not time. And the lawmakers passed the idea while acknowledging that the Senate would have to fix some problems with that proposal. Instead of advancing it to a final vote and on to the Senate, House leadership instead returned it to the Rules Committee. Now, Sarah Vance, who was the sponsor, said Gray's amendment was, quote, incomplete and only dealt with one small aspect of the age of consent and did not reflect the full intent by the sponsor. She voted against Gray's idea on the floor, and she believes that the age of consent issue needs to be examined holistically with attention to the legal age of marriage as well, et cetera, et cetera. She said the bill, which she authored, is intended only to require the state's Department of Family, Community, and Children's Services to screen eligible children for victimization and sexual abuse, trafficking, and exploitation, something that is already being done but isn't required by state law. This would have changed this to being something that was required by state law, and that Gray's handwritten amendment would have caused a lot of problems. Now, Gray says, no worries. He's got the new amendment, 8 pages. It's an 8-page. So he went from having a single 1-sentence scribble to now an 8-page amendment, and we'll see what else it has in it that is unexpected, or does it answer all the questions, or what it looks like. The new version sets the age of consent at 18 with exemptions if the two people are I just hate even to read this. As described by Gray, the new version sets the age of consent at 18 with exemptions if the two people having sex are within 4 years down to the day of each other. Anyway, the new amendment also clarifies it doesn't affect people who are married. So, it's good. It's good. His quote of the day was, "I look forward to the opportunity of bringing the full change to the age of consent as drafted by legislative lawyers correctly to the floor to get the real version passed." He said he doesn't know whether House lawmakers will support the new versions, but they hope they will. 32 people voted for the handwritten version of the amendment, so I believe if they supported that, why wouldn't they support the correct legally drafted version on the floor, he said. So, okay, all right, he's passionate. He's passionate about a lot of this stuff, and he has his reasons. I'm a little torn on that, and I'll be honest with you. I don't know if this is something we really need to fix or not, this specific the age of consent thing. I just don't know. Part of me is like, yeah, I mean, they need to have a little bit more, age on them and everything. But at the same time, do I want to get the government involved in everyone's life at every level, including, this kind of intimacy thing? And I understand what they're trying to do here. They're trying to prevent, predation and other things from going on. But at some point, I'm just, how much is too much to have the government involved in every aspect of your life? I mean, I'm just, So like I said, I'm torn on this. I'm 6 of one, half dozen of the other at this point. I'm just, I just don't know that we can. Yeah, I just don't know if I can deal with that or have a. I don't know if I can have a full support either way for that amendment because again, I think it's most importantly. I'm just not interested in the government getting deep into everybody's life on that. Not something that I am all about. What else we got here? Well, we're going to go over a little bit of some of the things that went on in the Senate on Earth Day. Oh, Earth Day. That would have been Monday. And then we'll talk a little bit about this new FTC rule, which this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. So we'll dive into this just a little bit because even though it's kind of national news, it does have an impact on some people here in the state. And I think, again, not a huge fan of the government getting involved in everything, but at the same time, no, I mean, I guess I'm not in favor of it, I guess is what I'm saying, but it does raise an interesting question. And we'll talk about that, the new FTC rule about non-compete clauses. And I guess we'll see where that one goes. And then, of course, another break in the Quintillion fiber optic. Don't worry, they just got $90 million to extend their fiber optic service, but it's broke again. So tell me again how bad Starlink is for everybody out there. Tell me about, we'll see what's that. We'll talk about that here as well. So those are just the few stories that we're going to be running here this morning and seeing what you guys got to say. And nobody wants the phones. Oh, Terry wanted the phones. Terry's only one person said open the phone line. So I guess I'm solo this morning. The crowd, the public has spoken, and we'll see. Nobody wants to hear phone calls this morning. Apparently, they just want to hear me this morning. All right, let's get going. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. Whoa. Well, I'm still trying to get up and over. I got into something bad when I was in Fairbanks. I don't know, bad food or something, but I have been I've had an upset stomach for 3 days. Excuse me. I'm still trying to get my head above water here. What's that? Jeannie, what's this? Jeannie is like, Jeannie, are you over in Florida? Is that what you're saying? Pure Florida. Okay. Good morning. Yeah. Legislate in haste. Ooh, that's a nice one. Legislate in haste, litigate in leisure. And that's exactly what it causes. Is that it causes, when you legislate in haste, it's going to be litigated down the road. But who's going to have to pay for all that? The public. Yeah. Yeah. Chris says these laws bring out the pedos. The amendment we really need to see is the wood chipper amendment. Oh, man. Model it after the Washington law. Age of consent is 16. 48 months older than that is a felony. So does that remain true if you're 18 and they're 22? I mean, right? And Kenneth is kind of, saying the same thing that I am. More government, more laws is never a good thing. Brian is a little sassy this morning. The government loves us and only wants the best for its beloved children. Yeah. I did not contact Carmela. I did not see the there was an email. Like I said, I'm sorry. I've not been feeling good, and I've been working at the same time, not very effectively, unfortunately. I did not see a email from Carmela with the contact information, or I did not receive an email from her either. So if somebody did send me the information, I do not see it in my email unless you sent it some other way. Okay. Whose amendment? Gray. Yes. Does he even have kids? No. Mm-hmm. Rep. Elise Galvin, founder of the Great Alaska Schools, held a Zoom meeting on the Correspondence Court decision. She used it to gather data from those who signed on. Those who signed on had to sign a release for data mining. Then she proceeded to tell all that the BSA need to be raised. Listeners only had 30 seconds to talk and ask questions or comment. Well, Yeah, that's a good point, Ron. I hadn't even gone in that direction. So a minor can have their genitals altered without parental consent, but it'll be a felony if they use them for their natural intent. That makes a lot of sense. Oh, man. Oof. All right. Sorry, I'm still trying to get caught up. Hi, y'all is a Florida thing. Okay, I'm sorry. I got it. Okay. So 18 to 22 is a felony. So you're an adult. You could serve in the military, but you can't have a partner who's 22 years old. That's the dumbest thing ever. I'm just saying. That's not something I would want to model anything after at that point. That makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. I was married when I was 20, so that makes no sense whatsoever. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Okay, you ready for the next little segment here? Sorry, we were talking about some stuff here. Oh, now everybody's screaming to open the phones. Okay, all right, fine. I'll open the phones. You guys, man, make up your mind. What do you want? I'll open up the phone lines here just a sec. We were just talking again about the age of consent, and Jeannie suggested we should follow what Washington does, which is the age of consent is 16. And then anybody who is 48 months older, it would be illegal. It'd be a felony. And so I'm like, okay, but does that mean that if you are 18 years old and you're 18 years old and you have a boyfriend / girlfriend, whatever, who's and so then Ron made the I thought was the brilliant comment saying, so a minor can have their genitals altered without parental consent, but it will be a felony if they use them for their natural intent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's what I'm saying. I'm really like, no, I'm not really interested in the government getting involved in more of this, quite honestly. I just think we need to leave it alone. Leave it alone. All right, so the phone lines are open now if you want to sound off. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864 if you want to sound off. Some people wanted to call. So anyway, where were we? There we go. We're going to talk about this in Fairbanks. This was tragic. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a plane crash yesterday in Fairbanks. It was a cargo plane. It took off from Fairbanks International Airport about 9:55 a.m., roughly around there. It was a Douglas DC-4, and it crashed about 4 minutes after takeoff. And it was tough. Rosy Creek Farm owner Mike Emmers was in his office about 10 a.m. when he heard the explosion. He said he looked out the window and coming right over the farm was a 4-engine plane and one of the engines was on fire. Said they tried to call 911 but couldn't get through. Then he heard an explosion followed by a crash. He called Trooper Emergency Dispatch and run towards the column of dark smoke rising from the crash site, which he heard was a very loud explosion. His teenage son followed him. The plane crashed at the base of a forested bluff along the river, and the fire was spreading into the stands of spruce. They tried to beat it back to see if they could get it. There was a large debris field as well, some of it out on the ice. Troopers were on the scene via helicopter, which is the military version of the C-54 Skymaster. Those have been used for transporting cargo, and in recent years in Fairbanks, well, for a couple decades, they've been used for hauling fuel up to the slope or to other communities. The aircraft that crashed was registered to Alaska Aerofuel, which is a Wasilla-based fuel hauling company. But they had no comment when they were contacted about this. But there's actually a video of the of it happening as it slipped over the top of the hill by the farm there. They had cameras outside, and they saw it's a rough deal, man. And I feel bad. So whoever was, so for the folks over there at Alaska Airfuel and for the pilots and their families and everything else, so sorry for you guys. It was kind of a crazy time for something like this to happen. Again, no word as to what's going on exactly, but with one engine on fire, according to witnesses, that they had obviously had something bad going on there. So thoughts and prayers out to all the folks there in regards to that business and what's going on. So, all right, let's go over here let's talk about this, because this is, again, on the one hand, I'm not a fan of governmental intervention, but at the other hand, they are pointing out a problem that I personally experience. And that is the issue of a non-compete clause. U.S. companies would no longer be able to bar employees from taking jobs with a competitor under a rule approved by the federal agency on Tuesday, though there's sure to be a rule that's sure to be challenged in court. The FTC voted Tuesday 3-2 to ban measures known as non-compete agreements, which bars workers from jumping to or starting competing companies for a prescribed period of time. Roughly 1 in 5 workers, according to the FTC, are now subject to such restrictions. A 2021 study by the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis found that more than 1 in 10 workers who earn $20 or less an hour are covered by non-compete agreements. The FTC officials have asserted that non-compete agreements harm workers by reducing their ability to switch jobs for higher pay, a step that often provides most workers with their biggest pay increases. By reducing overall churn in the job market, the agency argued the measures also disadvantage workers who aren't covered by them because fewer jobs become available as fewer people leave their positions. Now, having been I would like to say almost a victim of a non-compete, because I did not realize that it was part of the package because it was never mentioned until, anyway, the day I showed up for something. Let's just say it's a booger. I mean, it is a trap, especially if it's not something that you're aware of ahead of time. It is a trap that kind of binds you to it. And it's a real problem. When I decided to leave a previous employer, and decided to do something completely different than being on broadcast radio, they attempted to, they still attempted to utilize that to force me to silence my voice, I guess I should say. And it was a pretty rough time. It was a 6-month non-compete. And I don't know about you guys, but 6 months without an income can be a little jarring. Some people, I'm sure, don't even have enough to be able to make it through that. It's a rough time. It can be a rough time for sure. So while I'm not a fan of government coming in and telling businesses what they can and cannot do, in this regard, at least they're bringing overall attention to it. And I can understand the use of non-competes, especially for business that has, proprietary information or secrets, or you're taking your account lists or something with you. I can understand a limited use of it, but to completely bar somebody from being able to do what they do for a living and have done for a living is, well, it's a little nutty to basically say you work for us or else. You work for us or you don't work for 6 months. With the, in my case, it was one of the few, I'd been doing that work for 20 years. A little hard to change jobs in the middle of a stream. And what am I going to go do? Pick up and deliver pizzas? So while I understand that there is a component of a non-compete that needs to be, that businesses need to protect themselves. At the same time, I don't think that it should also handcuff and shackle the employees to that job for the fear that they won't be able to support themselves or their family in the coming future. So it's an interesting discussion, and it at least is starting to bring this up to people. I had no idea that it was so prevalent, though. 1 in 5 workers are subject to a non-compete, and 1 in 10 earn less than $20 an hour. I mean, that's insane that you would I guess it would make it easier to change jobs if you're working a lower paying job. But at the same time, that's crazy. I mean, I understand businesses wanting to protect themselves in certain aspects, but it should not become legalized, essentially indentured servitude, because you're afraid you won't be able to support your family for 6 months while you're on the beach, so to speak, for those kind of things. It's crazy. Brian just said it's good enough for Dave Ramsey. Did Dave Ramsey have a non-compete? Didn't he have some kind of thing about a non-compete or something like that? Non-competes are kind of common in radio. But yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing for sure. All right. Where are we at here? So that's the other story that it kind of caught my attention. I don't know what's going to happen with it. The rule is going to go into effect in 4 months if it's not challenged legally. I would fully expect that somebody is probably going to challenge it legally at this point. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce said Tuesday that it will file a lawsuit to block the rule. and it accused the FTC of overstepping its authority. Suzanne Clark, the chamber's CEO, said non-compete agreements are either upheld or dismissed under well-established state laws governing their use, yet today 3 unelected commissioners who have unilaterally decided that they have the authority to declare what's a legitimate business decision and what's not by moving a ban to ban non-compete agreements in all sectors of the economy. So again, I'm not a fan of the FTC coming in and saying that, these are all gone because we know better than you. But at the same time, I am appreciative at least that this has now come up and made some headlines because, it's irritating as hell when something like that happens. Okay. What else we got here? Let me close this, close that. Let's talk a little bit about what happened in the Senate. Do I have enough time? I do. Okay, we've got a few things here. The Senate voted unanimously on Monday to make it easier for groups of Alaskans to invest in wind and solar power projects. Now, here's my question. I haven't read the bill, so forgive me if you have read the bill and you understand it, but what exactly does it say when they voted to make it easier for groups of Alaskans to invest in these projects? What do you mean made it easier? Made it cheaper? They subsidized it? Government spent some money on it? I mean, how easy is it to invest your money? Pretty easy. Why does it, Senate Bill 152 allows Alaskans to jointly invest in a renewable power project. And if the project produces more electricity than its subscribers use, those subscribers can share the benefits when the excess power is sold to a local authority. So the current electric regulations allow so-called net metering to only be applied to a single electric meter. SB 152 changes the rules to allow the benefits to be applied to multiple meters, such as in homeowners or condo associations. So if they jointly invest in a renewable power project and they get more power out of it than they use, they can all get some kind of benefit back from the electric association or something for the net, again, for the pennies on the dollar that come back to them. So, I guess I can see that, although I don't know if that's the right, make it easier for groups of Alaskans to invest. I guess I would say more profitable instead of easier, but, I might be splitting hairs there. The Senate also voted by a 15-5 margin to change the eligibility standards for Alaska resident hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses. Senate Bill 171 from Senator Jesse Bjorkman would tie those standards to eligibility for the annual PFD. That means recipients would have to live in the state for at least 180 days per year with some special exemptions. Currently, resident licenses are available to people who live in the state for at least 1 year, keep a home in the state, plan to return to the state, and don't claim residency anywhere else. The law enforcement officials in the committee testified earlier this year that the current standards are so loose that it's difficult to prosecute someone for improper use of a resident license. Mike Schauer was opposed to this. He said it could be unfair to snowbird residents who spend winters in Florida or other warm climate locations. He said it may also violate the state's constitutional provision guaranteeing equal access to fish and game. So we'll see what happens when it hits the House side of the world. But I guess we'll see. We'll get it straight from the horse's mouth. We'll talk with Schauer here when we get back at the top of the hour. So there we go. All right. So the phone lines are open. If you wanted to sound off on anything, here's the time to do it. 319-527-3864. We will be back with more right after this.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend.
Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're getting ready to do this right here. Okay, prayers for family. Did I get the thing? All squared away. Off to Los Angeles again. Pray for me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Someone needs to tell GVA that it stands for Golden Valley Electric Association, not Golden Valley Environmental Association. It's true. I mean, they should tell somebody, right? They should tell somebody. All right. Well, I hate to do this, guys, but again, I'm still not feeling 100%, and I will be right back here in just a moment. I know you hate this. So do I. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back. Okay. Whew. Yeah, I don't know what it was. A little bit of, I think it's, quite honestly, I think it was a little bit of food stuff because it's just my GI tract that's been like, woof, woof, bad stuff. I hadn't eaten since Sunday until yesterday. I ate a little bit something last night for dinner. I had a little bit of a sandwich, and that was pretty much all I've had to eat since Sunday because it was my stomach has been upset. So, but it's getting a little better. So we should all be good to go here. It all worked out in the end, right? Let's go. Here we go. Jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do it. In 5.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Okay. Well, we're back. Hour 1 continues. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. What do we got here? We were talking about Earth Day and the other thing, and I think that's it. All right, so on to the final story for this hour. With the phone lines being open now. So if you want to sound off, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say as well. 907-433. No, I'm sorry. 319-527-3864. 319-527-3864. If you'd like to call in, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to give us a ring and talk about whatever story you want to talk about. But I had to laugh about this one because, wow. So Quintillion, the broadband provider who provides much of the internet service for the North Slope, they're the backbone provider, had an outage starting about 11 p.m. on Monday. And there was a breakage that happened between Licktock Point and Greater Kapparik area, which is about 40 miles west of Prudhoe Bay. It affected all Quintillion markets. Now, here's the interesting thing. Telecom companies like Alaska Communications, GCI, AT&T, OTZ Telecommunications, and Arctic Slope Telephone Association Cooperative all rely on Quintillion's fiber network. So they are the provider for all of those other providers out there. And it broke down again, right? So they said the break happened in an area with ongoing oil and gas maintenance and development. Now, does that mean that they are blaming is it something to do with oil and gas that caused the break, that caused it to go down? I mean, that was kind of the implication. They said they're on site to determine that the team on site determined that one of the fibers on this Quintillion route was broken due to environmental conditions in the Kapparik oil and gas operating area. Okay, so first it reads as if this is an oil and gas maintenance and development issue, and then we just find out that it happened in the area where it happened. So they were able to reconfigure the network and temporarily restored service as of Tuesday afternoon. But it also means that as they reroute this stuff and everything else, that it's going to slow everything way down, because that's what they experienced in the past. GCI customers in Nome, Kotzebue, Ukhtavik, and Wainwright experienced slower internet and wireless service. The company was transitioning services in affected communities to backup network infrastructure on Tuesday. In Akasuk, Point Hope, Ukhtavik, and Wainwright, ASTAC customers had experienced an all-services network outage, which included internet, cellular, and long-distance service. ASTAC was the company that sent me that. Remember when I told you that somebody sent me an email that, I somehow got on their mailing list, probably because some listener put my email address in there so that I would get updates. And they were the ones that were touting their brand new service for all this stuff and only $400 a month for 500 megabytes or whatever. I mean, it was just, this nutty thing. And again, tell me again how Starlink is not the answer to most of these problems. I mean, it's not perfect by any strange stretch of the imagination, but tell me again how Starlink couldn't do a lot of the things that we're talking about here. The breakage caused in Kotzebue for the 911 system to be down on AT&T's phones, and about 200 OTZ telecommunications customers experienced internet issues in Kotzebue on Tuesday morning. And so they said the residential internet was down, but we were able to route all of our services across backup satellites, so all of our calling services are up and texting. So great. Again, I'm, and by the way, I mean, I forgot to point this out. I did point this out earlier, but I'll point it out again. Quintillion just received an $89 million grant to extend fiber optic to more communities along Alaska's coastline. Why? And remember, Mike Shower put in an amendment to say you could also use satellite as long as it delivered, quality, equitable service to what the cable could. And that was shot down. Nobody wanted that. And yet here's what it is. Each community provider has its own communities and own networks. Each community is impacted to a different degree. Again, for instance, ASTAC had some satellite backup in place for its communities, but there's no statewide backup network to make these situations avoidable. So, I mean, this is okay. I mean, there you go. There's where you go. I don't know why. If I was living in one of these communities, I would pony up the $500 for the equipment and then the $100 a month for my internet through Starlink. Why would you not? At this point, why would you? Again, ASTAC, the one ASTAC, they were. I read you the prices right off their flyer, right off what they put forward on their flyer and in their website. I mean, you would be charged 4 times as much for slower service. Why would you embrace that? Other than, I guess, maybe if you get some kind of subsidy for using the one vendor over another, why would you not embrace the idea of, it's just maddening. Now, somebody said, well, Elon Musk, he should offer the state of Alaska some kind of sweetheart deal on Starlink units for, well, okay, did anybody bother to ask? I mean, it's not legal at this point, right? They're talking about broadband. And like I said, Mike Shower tried to put in a thing to allow them to use satellite providers as well, and they riddle it full of bullets. Why? I don't know. Protectionism, maybe? Who's got a hand in a lot of these companies? Who's got who's making money in a lot of these companies? Is there, something there? Should we follow the money? Why would we depend on that? And how long it took them months to fix that cable break. What was it, like 2.5, 3 months for them to fix the cable break back last summer? I mean, why? Why? Anyway, it makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me at all. But to me, this should be a follow the money story. It should be like, okay, why did you resist putting, at least allowing for satellite to be used or to be included in this? Why would you say no to that? Well, who are you protecting? Who are you protecting in this? Who follow the money? Who owns what in what company? Are there any legislative connections to some of these companies? Do they have family or relatives? Is there a good buddy or a high school sweetheart that was part of this, that's part of one of these companies? I don't know. To me, it makes no sense. Why would you deny the opportunities to open the door to other technologies, especially ones that can do it for a quarter of the price. Well, we've got to protect Alaskan businesses. We don't want to give our money to Starlink. We need to give it for the love of God, people. That is, I mean, really, that's your answer? It does a better job and it's cheaper overall. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do there? Okay. What's going on here? Have we missed anything else? We're pretty much out of time for this hour. We're going to have Mike Shower coming on in hour 2. He's going to hate me so much. He sent me a text message last night at, I don't know, 10:30 or something. 10:30. Yeah. And I was asleep and I did not get the text until 4 this morning. And so I sent him a text back at 4:30 this morning that said, yes, I do. I will expect you. He's gonna hate me. He's gonna hate me. All right. So Senator Mike Shower will be joining us. We'll see what goes on here. Jim in the chat room says, Mike, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. From one aviator to my fellow aviators, bon pass. You know, I've known a lot of aviators throughout my life. A lot of people who've flown planes. My dad flew planes. A lot of his friends, folks out there. And somebody was quoting it this weekend at the when I was at the outdoor show, and I was having a conversation with somebody. We were talking about aircraft and things like that, and they said something along the lines of, who was it that they were quoting? It was one of the more famous Bush pilots out there, but basically saying, you know, every Bush pilot is going to crash at some point. The good ones walk away, essentially, is what he said. But he said, you know, it happens. And in fact, the guy who he was quoting, and I'm trying to remember the name of the pilot, he'd crashed something like 10 times in his career. I mean, this is it's a dangerous job, you know, even today with all the safety measures and everything else, still a dangerous job. But you're right. Bon pass. All right. We got to go. We'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Back with more right after this. Oh, my goodness. Sorry. My stomach has been mildly upset for 2 days, and this morning it is super upset. Like, you probably can hear it if you listen closely on the mic. It's like, does not like you very much. Richard Allen says, I worked for a major telecom in the lower 48 for 30 years. The reality is none of them are capable of promising foolproof service. I mean, I don't think any of us expect 100% uptime. The terrain here in Alaska in and of itself makes it nearly impossible for any provider to survive here. The return on investment is a suicide mission. What company wants to invest $78 billion in infrastructure and try to recoup that investment or profit by charging customers $79 a month? Well, that's true, except for that they just got a $90 million grant to build out all this stuff. So part of their infrastructure payout is already taken care of. That was the point. That's the point of that subsidy. And I understand what you're saying, Richard. But as a telecom worker, wouldn't it make sense if you want to avoid because you're saying the terrain here in Alaska makes it near impossible, right? Wouldn't it make sense to then focus on alternatives where, you know, if something goes wrong, you throw up another satellite, right? I mean, they got a whole constellation of low Earth orbit satellites up there. Wouldn't it make sense wouldn't it least sense to at least have the option, I guess is what I'm saying. Not saying that you mandate they go to satellite, but wouldn't it at least be nice that that, you had the opportunity or the option to do it. Oh. Denise says, I support Alaska businesses until they try to take advantage. Like a quote from a local business for $2,100 to fix an old heater, and I went out and bought a new one for $600. Oh man, for sure. Oh, apparently, is this the stomach bug that's going around? Oh, great. Oh, great. Yeah. Go to All About Herbs and get a product called Digestion. 3 doses and you'll be good as new. Well, I don't normally have problems with my digestion, so I think it's more about a bug than my digestive tract. But I mean, I'll try anything once. We'll see what we can come up with. All right. So should we let's do this here. Let's get the madman here on the show, shall we? See what he's doing this morning. Balls. Okay, let's try this again. One more time. Come on, there we go. There we go. Got it to work. Got it to work on round 2.
Hello.
Are you awake? I saw that you sent that late last night. I was sorry. I was asleep. I was dead asleep. So yeah.
I figured, but usually you give me a heads up if you're gonna.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry. I've been sick, and so I'm not very clear of thought the last couple of days. So I apologize with that. But yeah. So hey, how are you? You ready to go?
Oh, sure. Why not?
Sure, why not?
What else am I going to do?
Let's talk about residential hunting licenses. Let's talk about that. We were also talking about Quintillion and the fact that they had a line break on Tuesday, and they're and I'm asking the question again: why? Why would you? Who? And that's a follow the money. And then somebody sent me the article from Must Read about the SB 140 and who might be benefit. I said maybe we should be following the money, and then I forgot. Oh yeah, there's actual senators who may be involved in some of that stuff. So we can talk about that as well. Whatever you want to talk about, my friend. We're all good this morning. Yeah, it's all good. I'm ready to do this thing. All right. So
what did you have in the first hour?
It was just me blathering along for an hour.
Just you.
About other news and sources and stories. I've been working on trying to get a couple other people on, but like I said, the last couple of days have been a little rough, and so I get distracted trying to do work and pull the show together and do everything else at the same time, and it's just not. It's all I can do to stay on task for a little bit there. So, all right. So I'll be back to you here in just a second. Just don't go anywhere. We'll do that right there. Okay, yeah, somebody just dropped me this link in the chat room. I had forgotten about this article when I said show me the money or follow the money. That story's a reminder right there about what was the basis. Follow the money to higher internet in the rural areas, favoring cable and fiber, but not satellite. Remember who's the paid board president of the Bethel Native Corporation? That's the corporation that made millions of dollars in the last round of rural fiber optic grants. Just remember who that was. Oh yeah, Senator Hoffman. Is that you? Is that you? All right, we'll be back. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning. How are you? I hope that you are doing fine on this great Wednesday. It is it's the week is sliding right along, and I'm happy about that. We are jumping into hour 2 this morning, and we are going to be joined by State Senator Mike Shower, who joins us for what we lovingly call the Shower Hour of Power. It's kind of that's why we do. He joins us.
Just what we do.
That's just what we do. He just joins us this morning to talk about this and everything that's going on in the legislature and more. Good morning, sir. How are you doing this morning? What's happening?
Well, I'm just hanging out in Juneau, watching all the committees do their work and keeping an eye on things. Being the guard dog on the outside.
Exactly. That's what you're doing. You're like that pit bull that runs around the outside of the circle, like keeping everybody in and keeping everybody honest. Nobody wants to let you into the circle, but boy, you're there. If they step out, you're going to get them. All right. Well, I'm all about that. I'm all about that. We were just talking about a couple subjects that I'm sure you'll love to dive into. We were announcing, excuse me, the Earth Day legislation and all the things that went on Monday. And I know that I want to talk about the hunting license eligibility that you had some issue with, but we were just talking about the quintillion break, the new break that Quintillion has experienced up on the North Slope. And it forced me to revisit the question about fiber optic cabling or physical cabling versus satellite internet. And it reminded me that you had put forward a proposed amendment that would have included the ability to use satellite if providers liked it and if it provided the same service, and that got riddled full of bullets, I seem to recall as well. So take your pick your poison. What do you want to talk about to begin with?
Well, we talk about this one again. I mean, we talked about it when it came up, but I don't mind revisiting.
No, I mean, I think it's a good reminder.
Well, I mean, this is part of the point I made on the floor, Mike, when I tried to get the amendment through that basically was trying to tell people, look, it's like picking winners and losers as government is, frankly, has been ruled in the courts as unconstitutional. We're not supposed to be doing this, one business over another. There's something, if you go, there's a business, only a business or one business, let's say, that offers the service that's required. That's one thing. But when you have many businesses or you have different types of businesses that offer the same basic service, say cable versus satellite, then we're not supposed to be picking winners and losers. Like I said, let's take an example. Let's say the military says they have a certain requirement and it has to be a fiber optic cable between point A and point B. Let's say Wainwright or Clear Air Force Station and the Ballistic Missile Defense Base, right over on the other side by Greeley. And they want fiber optic cable because they want to make sure it's secure. Nobody can touch it. It's underground, et cetera. Okay. All right. I can see that. There's only
Right.
a few businesses that are going to be able to do that particular thing because you don't want to rely on satellites because the Chinese could take them out, or the Russian, so, okay, got it. That makes sense, right? You go, got it. But let's say there's another example of, I don't know, Alaska and we want to pass a bill that says, hey, we want to get high-speed internet to rural Alaska so that people can go to school, get better service, people can work from home, there's telehealth, there's all kinds of these really good things we could be doing that would allow people opportunity, hope, jobs, a stronger economy in rural Alaska. And go, you want to provide it for the entire state. Okay, cool. Maybe cable works in some cases. Maybe that's not the best option. Maybe somebody provides better service that's cheaper that we could put up quicker with the exact same type. Maybe so in that case, it's not appropriate to limit it to just one type of business. But let's say that the Alaska legislature passes a bill that basically limits it to just one type of business. Maybe even further within that sector, it's really only going to be one company providing that type of service. That's probably not something we should be doing as a government. We should be open to competition in the capitalist system that we have, capitalism, that says, hey, may the best man win. Whoever can provide the best service for the best price is who we should be giving the contract to in a request for proposal. But let's say that in the Alaska legislature, that's not how we normally do business. We're going to give it to one type of business, and we're going to make sure it's written that way. And maybe people would be benefiting financially from that. That might be how things happen in the Alaska legislature, which I would argue is not appropriate. So just as a theoretical exercise, let's just say that's what we did this morning.
Right. Well, and let's take a look at this part too, because somebody, when I started asking about following the money, somebody dropped me a link to the old must-read story from February that I forgot about that outlined the fact that this money is going to, in this situation, to Bethel Native Corporation, where they got back in 2022, they got a $42 million grant. And then pass that out to GC. Why do we have to get other organizations involved to handle the money? Because, every time that happens, some of that money gets siphoned off and, everybody that puts their hands on it gets money. Why don't we just put the money straight into the hands of the companies? Even if we did just choose one company, why are we putting all these middlemen in the middle who are getting their taste on the way by kind of thing? That's my question.
Because, Mike, it's government politics. Because people have control of the money flow, because people can get their personal legislation through where that maybe them or their friends or people that got them elected or big unions or you name the, excuse me. Hate when you hear that sneeze, you get the pause, you can't talk.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, but maybe people are going to benefit from this, and there's an old saying I've heard this before. There's slime versus crime. There is something that is probably really, clearly unethical, could be illegal, but definitely unethical, and right on the edge of being able to be legal where somebody could get in trouble. But there's no way to charge somebody with a crime, or the people that are passing the legislation or the companies or the lobbyists or you name it who it is are able to sneak it through because they look at it and they're dancing right on the edge. Well, let's say, for example, I don't know, somebody had property and they were going to do something that, benefited that property, maybe build a road. I don't know. And, I'm just, again, making up a theoretical thing here. I'm not saying I saw this down here in the legislature or anything. And, they were to build a road across the property that they owned or maybe their friends owned. And they were going to see that property value dramatically increase. And they were using, state money and federal money to build a road. And but because other people might also benefit, it wouldn't be just them. Well, that's slime versus crime. All right, you can't directly charge them. Or they pass a bill that basically narrowly tailors a business for cable, right? And we want to get that high speed internet like you're just talking about, and maybe people that they know benefit from it or direct financially, but because it's a bill that helps many people, or it is tailored in such a way that those only that kind of business or that particular business is going to get it. Well, then you can say, well, that person's not directly benefiting, so that's okay. Or maybe an example of a prosecutor, at the federal government that throws a case, right, and then goes to work for a legislator after throwing the case. And but there is, no actual statute federally that you can prosecute that former, deputy
Right.
attorney general with, because nobody ever thought that a deputy attorney general would throw a case like that. So there's actually no law to charge with. I'm just saying there's all these theoretical things that I think of that could possibly happen.
Right.
And
Slime
I just bring
versus
them up
crime.
for the discussion points.
Yeah.
In the in the radio show. I just thought it was things you guys could mull over.
These are all
chew over on the
hypothetical
Wednesday
situations that you could chew on and think about. The slime versus
Just
crime
things that
question. Yeah.
could happen, whatever.
Well, and for a second, I do want to go back to the actual amendment process where you talked about this, because the article from Must Read mentions during a recent bid to provide service to the Lower Yukon-Kuskokwim School District, Microcom won the bid using Starlink terminals over GCI. Microcom came in at 1/10 of the price. So we know that it's possible. They also talk about Scammon Bay, where GCI offers 10 megabits download and Starlink offers up to 220 megabits download for a fraction of the price. And so you got to start asking these questions. So when you proposed this amendment, your amendment was very specifically that it didn't mandate satellite. It just allowed it as an option as long as it provided the complementary or the same service, right? That was what the amendment was.
Yeah, basically, Mike, we're trying to drive down cost for the taxpayer and provide the same or better service. And honestly, I could really care less who does that. If it's cable, great. If it's satellite, terrific. I don't care who provides the best service for the best price. That is good governance, Michael. That is good stewardship of the taxpayer dollar. But when we write legislation specifically for one type of business, then we are limiting what we're doing and we're picking winners and losers. And quite frankly, as I started out with, the courts have said we're not supposed to do that. But, again, it's the legislature. We don't follow laws. We get away with stuff all the time. It's just boggles my mind. I think I might have been the only no vote that day, actually, as it turned out, if I remember right. I might have been the only no vote in the Senate on that particular bill when that didn't pass. I go, I can't support this. I support high-speed internet because I want to get people in rural Alaska the same opportunities. I'm all about doing that. And the feds are throwing money at us. So, okay, well, we're going to use it because we're not going to turn it down, even though people always talk. Even the bill sponsor, like, this is kind of, $40 million a year, but $360 million of it is federal grant money. So it doesn't cost us anything. I'm like, really? Doesn't cost us a penny, huh? Because we don't all send hundreds of millions of dollars to the federal government every year.
Right.
Really? So in taxes. So you're right. It's free. You see, that's part of the problem of the thought process here, Mike, is that we in the legislature go, well, let's take that federal money because it's free. I don't think it means what you think it means, Pepe, that this money is free. It's like, senor, is this free money?
Yeah.
I don't think that is what you think it is, Pepe. No, it's not free money, Michael. It's money that's costing us either way. And when you look at the cost, like I said before, you could, if I remember my math right, for the $40 million without taking $360 million of taxpayer money, that's our money anyways, for $40 million a year, that first $40 million of our state money, if you wanted to go that way, we could have 67. I did the math because I got Starlink, so I just used the number. You divide the initial service, how much it costs to get a dish and get it all set up. You could get 67,000 homes in one fell swoop. The entire, basically most of the state in one year, be done. Everybody could have it. And then you could buy 445,000 $90 a month high-speed subscriptions from Starlink. That's pretty much every Alaskan and then some. We could start handing it away to, I don't know, illegal immigrants crossing the border, who knows, for free, because we're doing that. So, Mike, look at the numbers on that. That's high-speed internet for everybody. For the 40 million, without 360 million more taxpayer dollars, without forcing us forever to pay this cost. When my chief of staff was breaking it down, some of these schools are paying like $140,000 a month, just ridiculous sums for cable. When, like you said, some of these other services are a couple thousand. How are we justifying this? it just makes your head hurt to think that this is how we do business, and everybody was okay with it. I don't want to get Mike, because it's not right.
Right.
What
Exactly.
we're doing was not the efficient. It's not the cheap, and you can't even get it everywhere in the state with cable, because there's some places so remote, so difficult. You have that problem. So you could say, for backup, and I'll make it quick, maybe there's places where cable makes sense. Like I gave the example of Clear Air Force Station to the ballistic missile defense base with our missile interceptors. But there's other places where you can't do that at all, so use satellite. Maybe there's some places where the point is, Mike, this is like the military thing, right? Flexibility. You have 2 is 1, 1 is none.
Right.
There are times where you want to back up, for things that might make sense on a national security perspective or state services that are critical. There are things that you might, but the point is, Mike, we did what government does, bad government does. We picked winners and losers. We made sure that one was going to probably get it over another. We made sure we were going to spend more money when we didn't have to, and possibly people are benefiting from this in a way that really maybe isn't clean. So, hey, here we are. It's Alaska.
And here we are, my friends. All right, we're going to continue here. Mike Shower is our guest. He's going to tell us how he really feels in a minute. We'll be back with more, taking a look at some of the other things that are going on in the legislature, what the last 3 or 4 weeks is going to look like. We'll get it all from Mike Shower here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Mike Shower is our guest here on the program, and we're running along with him. It kind of makes me, I was already sick to my stomach, but now I just kind of get a little bit more sick to my stomach when I see this kind of stuff, and I realize that it's all kind of linked. Again, the slime versus the crime. Everybody picking winners and losers. We have the option to do it for a better rate, a better way, a better deal, but we're stuck in that the old, this is how we've always done it curse. And that seems to be the nature of the beasts as we go through right here.
Yeah, it's state and federal, and it's governments. Mike, and let's be clear, this isn't just an Alaska or an America problem. This is everywhere. You look at governments around the world, they're corrupt. It's where some of the worst people go. Look at Ukraine. We're giving billions of dollars to Ukraine. It's not like they're a clean, upstanding government. They got all kinds of corruption and things that are taking place in history there. So, and by no means am I saying Putin's a good guy and we should be like, oh yeah, Russia, go invade another country now. But my point is that, it's like we do this and everybody, you're flying your Ukraine flags, and even the Alaska legislature, you may remember that a couple of years ago when the war kicked off, Michael, they wanted a resolution. And I'm like, no, I have more time than all the rest of them combined in the military. And Peter Machicki, as the president, was like, whoa, at ease, and he's like, what's wrong? He's like, we can't pass this without you. And I'm like, you guys are advocating, especially the Democrats, are beating the war drums. I thought you guys are the anti-war party. I thought you guys hated Bush and the war on terror and the whole thing was a sham. And, and here you guys are like, let's go to war. Let's do it. I'm like, with a near peer competitor? This isn't Iraq, Bubba. This isn't Afghanistan that has no Air Force, no Navy, no Army to speak of, and no nuclear weapons. This is a first world nation, basically, with a lot of nuclear weapons. And you guys are like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, what? So it's just that kind of thing, right? That people just, I don't know, Mike. It's just one of those things that I'm so vexed with governments in general and the things we do. And this is all over the place. Like I said, Alaska is just another government, right? It's just those kind of things. I hate to be gloomy and doomy this morning, but I have told you guys, I will tell you the truth. I'm not going to flinch from that. So you need to know what's going on.
Rob Myers says, we pass the money through the middlemen because that's how the government tries to create an economy after the government has crippled the private economy by taking all of the resource money.
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
not. He's not
Rob-
wrong. He's not wrong.
No, Rob talks about it all the time. He's got
Yeah.
some great special orders just to listen
Yeah.
listen to. That he talks about the fact that we're a petro state and how screwed up that makes us. He talks about the fact that it's private sector. Matter of fact, Rob and I are the only two I think that consistently talk about the private sector. Ben Carpenter does it in the other body, always talking about the private sector and the fact that it's always a second thought. It's an afterthought in
Oh,
government.
it's not even a
The
second
very
thought.
thing that
It's the
yeah,
leftover.
the third thought, a 10th thought. It's not even maybe not a thought. I don't know, but it's one of those things. You go, the private sector is where almost everybody is employed
Yeah.
in our economy, in our country, in our state. It's the thing that provides the money to the government to be able to spend all this money that we're doing. And yet, here in Juneau, it's all we talk about.
Yeah.
It's just the public sector. The public sector is that thing that movie, and I forget what it was. It's like, for the republic. So this is the private sector. No, we don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
We give it to the public sector, and everything's. But just yesterday, Michael, there was people here protesting, and I'm sure it was for probably Senate Bill 88. To try to get that through, that to
Right.
revive that thing that's just going to, one more step in the wrong direction. Let's start repeating. Let's never learn from history. Let's repeat the mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
Let's go back to a system that was bankrupting us. Awesome.
Yeah.
And they were out there
do it.
cheering
Yeah.
and chanting. Instead of working, they weren't working. They were
let's do
cheering
it.
and chanting out in front of the building. So.
Richard says, how fast is Starlink, Mike? And if you wanted, could you take your equipment and connect it somewhere else? Starlink is 500 megabytes, so half a gig down. And yes, you could take it and connect it somewhere else.
You can move it. People take it mobile.
The home unit. You could take it to a motorhome if you want. They make a mobile version, but you could take your home unit with you and set it up just about anywhere. So you could.
All it is it's a little dish, Mike, that points at the sky with the cable running to it to a modem.
That's it.
If you got a power source, that's all you need.
That's all you need.
It's that simple.
It's good stuff.
I hooked it up in less than 10 minutes at my house. Less than 10 minutes. The whole thing, turn it on, good to go.
Good.
I said, GCI, see ya.
See ya. All right. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do it.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Enemy. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yes, that's me. Pain in the something. All right. Let's continue on here. Mike Shower is our guest. We've been talking about some of the bills that have gone through in the last couple days. On Monday, there was a bill about residential hunting and the requirements for residential hunting and eligibility. The Senate voted 15-5 to change those eligibility standards to make them match the permanent fund dividend, meaning you have to reside in the state for 180 days per year, with some special exemptions and everything else. And you actually spoke out against this. Law enforcement officials, apparently, I don't know if it was Fish and Game or whatever, testified that the current standards are difficult to prosecute people for improper use of a resident license. And you had some things to say about this. So give me your thoughts on what's going on. Is it a real problem?
That maybe affected the whole state, that maybe was the foundation of a free republic that was, using law and order and God's law, right? So the 10 Commandments and everything. So let's just maybe say that we were discussing something that was important like that related to that very foundational principle, I don't know, of an election system that needs to be tight and secure so that the people believed in it,
right?
To the results.
Theoretically,
and you're putting a bill up in committees and on the floor trying to get it passed, and they say, this is a problem and this is a solution in search of a problem. We don't need this. There's no problem. Everything's fine. Oh, okay. But then we put up a bill like this one, and nobody mentions anything until the bill's sponsor at the very end. His closing statements he said, we have dozens or maybe hundreds of people that this happens with. I'm like, dozens, huh? Dozens of people, and yet we're gonna pass a bill for that, right? Well, I can't get election integrity through this foundational to the entire country, making sure that the people trust the results, or I can't get a bill through that, actually follows the Constitution for once, that the the legislature has involvement in appointing judges to the lower three courts, which is exactly what our Constitution says. But we're not going to do that. We're going to hand that off to that Alaska Bar Association, let a private trader. So here's my point: is that we pass bills and say that, well, there's dozens of people that this happens, maybe hundreds. Well, isn't that kind of the same solution that's looking for a problem? That was kind of my point, Mike. I'm like, why are we writing a bill and spending time on something and changing something that's going to have dramatic impacts for many Alaskans for a few, literally, bad actors? And if they can't prosecute them, well, all right, got it. But are you really going to take away the hunting and fishing rights of an 84? And I'm using this example because it came up in the committee hearing in the House, because there is a Democrat with the exact same companion bill in the House, word for word. And in the committee hearings, because I talked to Representative McCabe, was telling me about it, so there was an example brought up of, well, what if it's an 84-year-old Alaska Native that spends months out of the state, down south visiting his children, because they're gone or whatever, and he spends 7 months or 182 days, right, and he can't come back and hunt and fish anymore in his traditional lands? And the answer from one of the Democrats was, we don't care about that guy. Really? Interesting.
That's not what the law says. Wait a second. I just want to point out, that's not what the law says. You could say you don't care about that guy, but that's not what the law says. And by the way, it's not our job to make it easier for law enforcement to do their jobs. I mean, if you wanted to make it easy, just abolish the Constitution and they can do whatever they want, and then their jobs are easy, right? They can prosecute any way to do anybody. But if you're only talking about a dozen people or dozens of people in a state of 700,000 people, again, this does seem like a solution looking for a problem.
Well, beyond that too, Mike, is that, like, you have the example of people that clearly maybe they were born here, maybe they're native. And, we usually give great deference to natives to be able to do anything they want on their traditional lands. And now here comes along a bill that says, even an Alaska Native that leaves the state, if he doesn't meet the specific requirements of getting a PFD, well, then he can no longer hunt and fish unless he wants to pay non-resident. And you think that guy is truly leaving the state and doesn't intend to return or come back and fish and is hunting his traditional lands? But you just passed a bill, Alaska State Senate, that says he can't. He's going to be charged as if he's from New York or California or anywhere else. How does that pass the common sense test? And here's the biggest point to me, Michael. I read it, parts of it, multiple times during the debate, because I wanted to make the point. We defer. Like I said, if I'm trying to pass an election law or something, that's like, oh, I've got alleged legal opinion, and it says right here that this could be unconstitutional, so we shouldn't do this, and they'll vote it down every time. So what do I have in my hands reading here, Mike? Alleged legal opinion that says this is probably unconstitutional, and it's going to violate the Equal Access Clause, Article 8. Read it right there, multiple parts of it, right from our legislature. And it didn't matter. Everybody voted for it anyways. I thought we respect legal's opinion. I thought when they tell us that, we don't want to do this because it could be unconstitutional. And yet they voted for it anyways. Funny how, like, one senator said something to do with another bill that Senator Wilson actually talked about it. And he said, hey, we've got this whole thing here from the Mat-Su School Board about this bill and the different things to do with the lowering the age. I believe it's Senator Giesel's bill, and I forgot which number it was. And it was about basically lowering the age of consent, if you will, from 18 to 16 and even lower. And all of a sudden, no parental consent. This whole attack on parental rights.
Right.
And one of the Democrat senators stood up and said, this misinformation is just so frustrating. I'm like, misinformation? That's an entire school system, a school board that's telling you that here's the problem we're facing. And you just go, no, misinformation. I don't like it, so it's got to be fake news, right? It's got to be misinformation. That's the label right now. And I even said that in my comments. I said, it's funny how when we don't like something today, it's just misinformation and you blow it off. And so, it happens to come from the conservative Mat-Su, which has a conservative school board, and it's a conservative community. And, by the way, is one of the best performing school districts in the state. But yeah, it's misinformation. We don't want to listen to that. So you see how the game is played. And you think the press is going to report on that? Of course not. They'll blow that off. This is the whole manipulation of our society, Michael, by those that have the power to manipulate it through social media, big tech, that can shut down certain opinions. Like I said, I used to get 6,000 or 7,000 views, like when I do a video, then it got to be like 600 or 700. Now it's like I'm lucky if 60. and I have more followers than I did then. So, but this is my point about it. It's like I go back to this, like this bill. I read right there in my hands the alleged legal opinion that we defer to when they don't want to pass a bill, but when they want to pass a bill, it's like, well, it's probably they're probably wrong. Okay, so whatever. And here we go. We passed the bill. So I think the good news is the House is not going to pass the bill, I hope. And they'll probably try to Christmas tree it. The Democrats over there are really sneaky and good about basically being completely dishonest about what's happening. But whatever. So, and there's these backroom deals between the Senate majority and the House minority, to work things through. And you got the Bush caucus, with the exception of Baker, that can hold the House majority, caucus hostage.
Right.
Because it takes, they only have, there's 21 Republicans, but you can't rely on at least one of them ever. So when you do that, those Bush caucus members matter because they can just decide to vote no, and all of a sudden all he got's 20, and 20 doesn't pass anything. So we're right back to shooting ourselves in the foot again, as usual. So as soon as Republicans or conservatives get a win, the first thing we do is turn to each other and go. So
circle the wagons. Circle the wagons and shoot inward. Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
So frustrating.
And I think this is, again, when you're talking about only, when you're talking about double-digit problems in a state with 700,000 people, but this is the same argument that we could use for everything from gun control on downward, right? I mean, the actual instances of criminal usage of gun is down in the 0.00 category as far as percentiles of ownership. And yet they're going to pass laws that affect the 99.99% on the other side. It's just, this is government's reaction to everything.
It is, but remember the battle over guns is much bigger than it has really nothing to do with guns, Mike. And the people that are anti-gun could really care less for the most part how many people die. The point to guns, taking them out of people's hands, that's power. If they can disarm the American populace, then they can treat us like sheep and they can do whatever they want because we have no means of resistance. And so that was clearly the intent of the founding fathers, was that the people would have the right through the militia back in the day, right? But they'd have the right to bear arms because that was what they just fought a whole war against a tyrannical government from England that wanted to confiscate the firearms so they could subjugate the population. That is the intent, a portion at least of the intent of the Second Amendment as written, was so that the citizenry would be armed and could always defend itself.
It's an implicit
anything, from a government to a criminal.
Right. It's the implicit threat. It's the implied threat of you can only push them so far before they push back. That's the whole point of the Second Amendment. And you're right, it's all about control because they believe that they know better than us how we should live our lives. And why don't we just get with the program? And if we didn't have guns, then they could just tell us what to do and send out
how can they force us
troops,
to eat bugs, Michael?
Yeah.
How can they force us to eat bugs and buy nothing but electric cars and live in 15-minute cities if we can fight back?
Right.
They can't, or that problem is much more difficult. But if all of a sudden you own all the power, you own all the guns, you own the electricity that runs everything that the people can only have, you control the supply of food, then all of a sudden you get a lot of power. And you look at a place like China, well, the government virtually controls everything. And people even down to social scores that they're actively using now, they can shut a person down, basically. So that's the ultimate goal for many people, and that's where the Second Amendment vexes them so much because it's a problem, right? I mean, that was the Obama thing. I could do a lot here if it wasn't for this pesky Constitution getting in my way. I'm like, that's kind of the point, Obama. That's why they did what they did, because they saw that people like you would want to come along and grab power over the people, and they said, "Nope, we're going to make this pesky piece of paper."
Yeah, the founders and framers of the national level and even at the state level, they intentionally make it so that it's a difficult process. That's the whole point. The process is to make it difficult so that you can't just arbitrarily pass laws on the fly quickly. Just out of the blue, because that was the whole point, because they understood that kind of stuff ultimately led to tyranny. All right, Mike Shower is our guest. Melissa asked the question, does the legislature get out on time, or does Mike Shower think there'll be a special session on any of this? We'll let Mike answer that question on the other side. And then we'll give him free reign. like he hasn't had that already. But we'll give him free reign to talk about whatever he wants to talk about and what's coming up in the next 3 weeks
as we wait for the legislature to wind down. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Mike Shower, our guest here on the program. I mean, I guess that's the thing, too. Like you said, it only affects a few amount of people, but it's really about, and this really, you mentioned it there in that last little comment, when the government controls pretty much everything. And that's kind of where we're at today. I mean, the founders would be a little shocked at how much depth and breadth the government has over control of everything in the country today. I mean, from whether you're talking about power or food supply or anything else, there's a lot. There's a lot in there that they have control over. And the framers would be, I would imagine, well, I've often said that they'd probably be in a tavern somewhere talking a little treason, because this is exactly what they were fighting against.
Michael, we are way past the point of what I think it ended up being the article's 23 grievances that they wrote to the king that were ignored. Eventually we got into the Revolutionary War. We are way past the point where the founding fathers would have been in a revolutionary war against this government based on the amount of power and control they have usurped and taken over the American people. We went to war against England for far, far less than where we are today. So yes, the founding fathers would have been put in jail. January 6th is nothing compared to what they would have done to the founding fathers by now. This federal government today and the left, they would have incarcerated and put them all to death by this point. And I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm being quite serious. The federal government has usurped so much power. We're way beyond where we were when they fought a revolutionary war to break from a government that had put so much burden on them, from taxes to other things. So yes, the founding fathers, I agree with you, would have already been in that tavern, discussing a revolution against the federal government, because we've gone past it. It's well beyond what they ever intended and what they were afraid of. We're living today again in exactly what the founders were afraid of. Once again, history repeats itself.
Yeah, remember the Boston Tea Party was over a 3% tax on mail. Just on mail, 3% tax on mail. Now look at all the taxes that we are forced to abide by at every level every day, from from the wholesale taxes and the fact that you're paying 30% of your cost on a loaf of bread goes to taxes at one level or another, or even just death taxes. I mean, it's astonishing. And yeah, the framers would be aghast if they popped up today and somebody handed them a newspaper. They'd be like, what the actual hell is going on around here? This is not what we intended.
Hundreds of billions of dollars, Michael.
Yeah.
Hundreds of billions of dollars that we have to provide to prop up dictators and bad governments all over the world. We've got, tens of millions of illegal aliens we have to take care of crossing the border. We've got, the endless foreign wars, a massive industrial complex. We just have all this stuff we have to pay for. So, and a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class, especially, to the wealthiest amongst us. So there is, there's a lot of people, Mike. I mean, those billionaires need some love too. And so we've got to make sure they get their fair share.
Fat Ray on YouTube says the tavern is gone, replaced by YouTube, Facebook, and the like. Guess who doesn't allow founding father talk in their tavern?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Stuff like this definitely gets you downvoted somewhere. And you'd be lucky. You'd be lucky if, half the time when my show goes live, I'm sure half the people don't even get notifications as to what's going on, let alone, like you said, posts that used to get thousands of views now get 100,
Again, we can thank Elon Musk for that, because he blew it wide open. He made it clear. He got the data that showed everybody. We knew it, right? Intrinsically, we all knew it. We had the data. We were suspicious of it. But it's hard sometimes. People say, "Well, is there fraud that that just proved the 2020 election was a?" I said, "I don't know. I said, I know there's fraud. There's plenty of cases of fraud. We have some up in Alaska. I've never contended that it through the election. It might have. I honestly, anybody that says it did is wrong. They don't know. I don't know. It could have. I simply don't know. So I'm not going to claim something that I don't know, but I always get flat. You're just an election denier. No, I'm not. I never said in Alaska that the 2020 election was that it was fraudulent, that Biden, because, well, by the way, we did vote for, Trump overwhelmingly in Alaska. So kind of thinking probably not. But is there fraud? Sure. Is there room for fraud? Yes, there is. Can we do better? Yes. But that's my point, right? It's like, well, you get blasted, for saying that. And it's like, you can't prove that there wasn't, right? But that's the standard I'm held to. I have to prove that it was there before I can pass a bill or change anything, or alleged legal. That opinion just doesn't matter on this one. We don't trust them. But hey, we like what they're doing. Yeah, you got to listen to what alleged legal says. I mean, right here it says it could be unconstitutional. Would vote it down.
Right.
But so it's just it's the same. It's that standard you talked about, right, Mike? It's differently applied to different people. The two-tier justice system we have, right? I mean, do you think, considering what Biden has done, all the same stuff Trump has done, that Biden's not being held in contempt, he's not being sued all over the country,
right?
But Trump is. There's two standards of justice.
Yeah,
you and I would go to jail a long time ago if we didn't have the money and the power.
Yeah, well, that's sure. I mean, if I did the same thing that Hunter Biden did, I'd be under the jail right now, right? I mean, there's no two ways about that for sure.
It's suicide.
All right, Mike Shower, hold the line. We're jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Yeah, I actually do know what it means, and it's still right. So, Mr. Snarky Voice Guy. Mike Shower is our guest. He's our guest here for Wednesday, what we like to call the Shower Hour of Power. Before we went to break, Melissa had asked a question in the chat room. She says, does the legislature get out on time, or does Mike Shower think there'll be a special session on any of these things, including, I guess I would say the biggest one that would come to my mind would be the question on the correspondence schools and everything else, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think, Mike? Do you get out on time? Is there a special session? Yes. What's happening?
Yes and no. So yes, I think we'll get out. Well, when I say on time, we're going to, we already passed the 90-day limit that the people passed. And they always tell us how, it's just impossible. We can't do it, except that big states. And I've made this point many times in the program, except big states like Texas, they meet like every other year. In a huge state with a very large and diverse economy, and they do it in a couple months. But Alaska, we got 90 days. We can't possibly do our work in 90 days, 1/4 of the year and get it done every year. And then, of course, we blast right past that one to the 120 days. So, yeah, we will go to the last day most likely because that's the MO. They've learned that it works, right? It's kind of like how you manipulate the system to your advantage. If you wait till the very end, the pressure builds. People want to leave. They're tired, sick of being in this place. They want to go home. Don't forget it's a campaign year. So there's a lot of people that have some really strong challengers this year. So they want to get out there here and go raise money and campaign hard to retain their seat, because that's what most politicians care about, is retaining the seat of power. And so, yeah, will we get out of here on time? If you consider on time ignoring one law, but following the Constitution for 120 days, yeah, we'll probably go right up to that limit and then we'll go. It works for pressure because a lot of legislators because if we don't, we're not going to get out of here, and they don't want to extend the 10 days that we could and have done in the past. And the no part is I don't think there will be a special session for that very same reason. I don't think the legislature, even if the governor was to call it, I think they'd meet, gavel in, gavel right back out and move on, because too many of them want to make sure they can go campaign. So I would imagine there probably will not be a special session for anything this year. The Democrats, and we've got good intel on this, are simply not interested in doing things with education. You go, well, Mike, they're all about education. They're not about education if they can try to hang it around the necks of Republicans as a millstone, because that's their goal now. And I've heard that one of the finance co-chairs in the House is not going to let, I think it's HB 52, which could do the education spending and kind of solve some of the stuff that the big battle happened over. But that finance co-chair from the Bush isn't going to let it through. because then that becomes the thing that they can hang that around Republicans and say, oh, well, the Republicans don't care about education. They didn't get anything done. Well, yeah, if you prevent them from getting anything done, then you can use that as a political weapon. So I'm not sure anything will happen with education because they want to use it as a weapon so they can get some more Democrats elected, take power, and then spend money and drive us into the dirt. Because that's where we're going, Michael. We have an anemic private sector, private sector is barely holding on. We're going to put all this money into a public sector. We're growing government. We're going to go back to a defined benefit plan at some point because they're going to weasel their way in somehow. They're going to put more money into education with no accountability. They're trying to destroy homeschooling by using lawfare with freaking Scott Kendall and the rest of an activist judge or whatever. And that's 22,000 plus kids. That's almost $200 million more that we have to spend. They're saving, right? Because we don't spend very much money on homeschool kids. They get a fraction of what the brick and mortar schools do. So, and then you look at other bills we're passing, $40 million every year for cable, et cetera, et cetera. We're a few short years, Mike, from running out of money. And then what's going to happen is an income tax or whatever to a state that can barely support a private sector that just doesn't have much of one. And half the people make less than the median average of 77,000. It's actually more than that, right? Because the people that make more offset that a bit. So who you can tax? I mean, look, Alaskans, you go to get a full cart of groceries at Fred Meyer's, a full cart, $700. And we were just talking with people yesterday in the office about electric bill and gas bill and the cost of things up here. There's one gal that was in my office, said $1,000 a month, $1,000 for her electric and gas bill, plus the cost of food. Now you're going to have to tax to support a small public sector, Mike, that is going to take most of our money to support that. So while they should be working, they're here protesting, right? While kids should be in school, in public school, they're here protesting with the help of Democrats pulling them into the legislature. This is the kind of stuff we're dealing with, and that's the direction that we are headed. We're going to run the Titanic into the iceberg, and they're going to be on it, and they will be the ones that will jump in the lifeboats while everybody else is thrown in the water. Because they'll either be gone or they'll have a parachute plan or they'll be funded by the government, taken care of by the government or the unions that got them here or whatever it may be, while the average person, Michael, out there is drowning and getting no support. And we're going to continue to go in that direction as opposed to pivoting. We're not going to pass a comprehensive fiscal policy. Representative Carpenter, to his credit, tried really hard to get HJR 7 through that would have just said there will be a PFD without putting the formula in the Constitution so we could take one part of the fiscal plan. Nope, couldn't get that passed.
Right.
And they have no interest in the spending cap that's going to prevent us this massive growth. They have no interest in even something as simple as the Sunset Commission that can reduce the cost of government by getting rid of extra, agencies and other stuff. I'm looking at things like right now, like we've talked about this, unfilled but funded PCNs, $90 million. Again, Representative Carpenter tried to get it through the House in the budget, but it didn't pass. $90 million of funded but unfilled PCNs. Now, some of those you have to leave because they're summer hires, right? You can't say all of it, but would you like to know how much of that 90 million has lapsed? In other words, the agencies didn't use it. Would you like to know? Because I can tell you.
I'd like to know.
$80 million of it unused from last year. $80 million of the 90 million. And that becomes, when the legislature's over, a slush fund. They can use it however they want. So these are the kind of things that are going on, Mike, and we continue to say, well, it's fine. Everything's good. Don't worry about this, whatever. You got some good stuff being done. I mean, I know I was talking to Rep. McCabe after the show last week. I think it was. He had the, I don't think it was HB3. It's the gold and silver bill,
Right.
to try to go back to legal with that. Unfortunately, there's some really good stuff that like Carpenter and McCabe and Vance and others that are doing in the other body. Rauscher's got one. I mean, there's some really good bills. Like he's got the election integrity stuff in my judicial bill that I was working on. He's doing the same kind of thing. But they're not getting very far because while they have, again, like the Senate, a majority of Republicans, there's some that are trouble that are not allowing us to be able to move forward on these issues. And the same thing in the Senate. There's more Republicans than Democrats, but guess who's in charge? The Democrats again. And it stymies any ability for a majority of Republicans in the body that should be able to be partisan enough
Right.
to pass issues that are important to Republicans and conservatives and even moderates that are, would be Republicans. And yet here we are fighting each other.
Right.
And instead of working together and getting past our differences, what was it, Ronald Reagan? I've heard one legislator that's in the Senate always talking about, I use the Reagan principle. I don't talk bad about Republicans. Hey, you guys don't talk about them. You just crush them. Right. You just freaking run over them with the bus. I don't talk about them bad, but I just crush them by running them over. and
Right.
shoving them into a minority and then joining with Democrats. How is it, Michael, that some Republicans seem to have more in common with far left wing, far left, progressive, communist, socialist, Marxist, whatever they are, than conservative Republicans when we're
Right.
in the same party? How
Well,
is that?
and that brings me actually
vexing.
over to my final question for the day. We got about 3.5 minutes here because this last weekend was the convention, and you got a new Republican Party chair, and part of her platform was making sure that the legislature had a true majority. That was one of her things. And you notice that some of the players who are part of the problem didn't even bother to show up. It's like they don't even, they even don't even care, or they're just, ambivalent or whatever. Do you think that the changes that are going on in the party itself, you think that's going to help? Is there going to be some censuring? Is there going to be some, we're not going to give you any money? Or, I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
Two things. I'll answer that, but I got a note here. This is fascinating. Senate put McCabe's $635,000 PCM reduction back in. So McCabe was trying to do that too, but the Senate put it back. See what I'm saying? It's like, doesn't matter what good work people are doing, Mike, it just gets overridden. So all you can do is keep trying. But moving on to your question, I think that the previous chair was not necessarily friendly to conservatives as my goal or is my impression, but that's born on experience. I had a conversation with that previous chair about what happened to the Senate majority and how we ended up with a Senate minority of Republicans and how we were treated. And the answer was, well, our job is just to get ours elected. What good is it to get ours elected if they go down and throw power to Democrats all the time? That doesn't help us. And if the party is not going to have some backbone and stand up and say, look, we're not going to support Republicans that keep joining with Democrats and giving them power, at least you're showing people that the Republican Party has a stance, that it believes in its own principles and platform. I'm hopeful the new chair will do that, and the new younger folks that are getting elected in will start to go in that direction. I am hopeful, right? Because when you have a change, it can be positive. And that way we start looking, because I've heard complaints, well, we can't raise any money. Well, how are you going to raise money as a Republican Party when you're supporting candidates that continually throw power to Democrats? And what's they say? We continually snatch, victory from the jaws of defeat.
Exactly. No, that's exactly what you do. You wonder why you can't raise money? It's because you're failing as a party. That's why, and people understand that. And I think
so. Let's show them that we can. And I think that the new leadership and the new listening to the sea change and the vibes there, I think I get some of that they want to get it back to where people can support the Republican Party and rejoin it and give it financial support, because we're gonna hold Republicans accountable. So
right.
I'm hopeful. I think there were some really positive changes made in some positive direction in the convention. And you're right. By the way, last point, as I hear the music, is that when you look at the delegates from the Republican side in the Senate, there was only 3 Republican delegates that bothered to show up.
Yeah.
And guess who it was? All 3 of the Senate minority. Nobody from the majority was a delegate.
Nobody showed up. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Mike Shower, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on board. Folks, tomorrow's another day. We'll see you tomorrow. Final thoughts, Mike, here before I let you go.
No, that was it. I mean, I think just you asked those questions about it. It's just the Republican Party has to show people that it is going to actually believe in and support its principles and platform.
Yep.
And when you have Republicans that continually don't do that, they govern, they campaign that way, and then they govern a different way. And until the Republican Party shows people that it's going to hold its members accountable to that party and platform, I think a lot of people are just looking and go, yeah, I'm done with the Republican Party. How are you going to grow the party and get financial support if you have a party that really doesn't? And I'm not saying all of it. There's some great Republicans, obviously. I'm trying to uphold the party principles and platforms, part of why I'm in a minority right now. But the party itself, especially at the leadership level, has to take that seriously. And the complaints of people that go, I'm not seeing the backbone, the strength, the willingness of the Republican Party in Alaska to hold its members, especially its elected officials, accountable to the party platform and the principles we value. And if they start to do that, even if certain legislators continually go to the dark side, I think at least people will have faith that the Republican Party is holding true to its values.
Right.
And that's very important, because that will show people that, yeah, we're going to try to change the course of the ship. We are, as Republicans, are going to start holding people accountable to those principles and platforms. So I just, that's very important to me, and that is something that I think the people wish to see. They understand the people are not stupid.
Right.
I think we always assume how stupid the people are, right? They're not stupid. They'll see a Republican Party that's trying to hold legislators accountable, and they'll know which legislators are blowing them off and just doing whatever they want. And so the people can deal with it, but it's so people at least we're going to do that.
Right. Right.
So.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mike Shower. Good to talk with you, my friend. I'll talk to you again soon.
See ya.
All right, folks, we are out of time.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.